fairly short meeting. Bob, I just sent an email with the draft. If you want to take a look at that or pull it up so you can talk about it later on.
How do I do that when this is my?
Oh, Scott, do you have access? Do you have access to? Good evening. do you have access to your emails on the machine you're on?
Yes, I think. You just sent me something like 2 minutes ago?
Yeah, I just sent some a couple minutes ago.
I got it, John.
Okay. Well, let's, there are three of us now, so let's call this recessed meeting back into order. And we had a chance to talk, Bob and I had a chance to talk with Chris today and get straightened out on the fire ambulance budget. The budget as it was given to us on a couple of days ago is a budget for 6 full-time fire force paramedics that we asked for. The question of going to further full-time people, the one which we will have to study for next year. Chris suggested that the way that we'd have to do this, the way we should do this is to, if we want to increase the size of the department, we should do it by a person a year. So for next year, and we'll study as to whether or not we actually needed to go to 6 instead of 5. And then we see how that goes, increase it by 1 the following year and 1 the following year. If it's by what a real, by real operations show during the year. And we thought it was a reasonable approach to the department's quest for increasing full-time personnel. We spent some time talking about some of the differences in cost between full-time personnel and the on-call personnel. Pass on to you one thing which we were told today about how operations are running today, and a change that was made this coming from what it has been in the past. And that is the fire ambulance department, the person at the fire department, at times they're supposed to have a paramedic there, and then perhaps an EMT or another paramedic, so they could have 2 people in case an ambulance goes out. But the way it works is this. The scheduling of personnel is figured out in advance. I don't know how far in advance. We were using just a month in advance as a example. But the fire chief figures out how to assign person for the next month within the shifts that they have. And so that a schedule is filled out for the, let's say, for the he has the full-time personnel and the part-time personnel that are Granby employees that he fills in full-time personnel. Then the part-time personnel can let him know, as there are vacancies in some of the slots, which ones they would like to take. And then that may or may not fill up the whole schedule. If it doesn't fill up the whole schedule, then the next thing that they go to is what used to be called the on-call personnel. And the way the on-call personnel works is they have a group of people who would be committed to come in and man the department in the building if they're needed, if that can't be done by Granby's own employees. It used to be that people were on call. They only had to come in and be paid for the time that they worked. I think there was a 2-hour minimum, but only for the time that they worked. So, that was where they were running into problems with getting commitments from people. So they had to move to a system where for the paramedics only, not for EMTs, but paramedics only, to get enough paramedics, they changed their time from this on-call position to a position where they are now paid for a 12-hour shift to come into the department and man the department. If the, can't get Granby personnel to do that, so that in itself is an increase in cost from what the on-call cost used to be to what the on-cost call is now. Because for the on-call personnel, you now have to get them to commit to helping out. You have to pay them for a 12-hour shift. It doesn't work that way with EMTs. EMTs are still on call with I think a 2-hour minimum that's required for them to be paid if they come to a call, but it's only if they're come to a call. What used to be the paramedics coming in for a call used to not be paid if they didn't actually go on call. Now, just to come in and man the station, they get paid for a 12 hour. So that's one change which is taking place next year.
So, John?
Yeah.
I actually know someone who is involved with Fire District 2, and he just told me that they're not all paramedics.
Right. Right.
So I mean, this is a kind of a step up that I'm not sure we need to do. You know, one paramedic and one EMT sounds
yes
reasonable.
Yes. But that's what we want to study it next year. We don't want to go to 8 right away. We agreed to go to 6 and then study this pretty thoroughly next year to see what the situation is, and then decide whether we need 5, 6, 7, 8, or whatever. Yeah, no, well, I'd heard that from someone else that the Fire District 2 operates with just EMTs and some paramedics.
Fire District 2, I don't believe, is an ALS service.
They rely on Fire District 1.
And they rely on Fire District 1 for all the ALS.
Right.
We're trying to run ALS.
Right.
And maybe the word is try is a little more important than otherwise. One thing I don't think you mentioned, John, or maybe you said it backwards. In the way they schedule, after they start out with all the vacancies and they go to the per diem people first, which would be outside the town of Granby. In the event that they can't fill it, then it becomes available to our own paramedics. But when our paramedics man it, they're getting 12 hours at time and a half. Rather than, well, let's say if they're at the top of the pay scale, $32 an hour, they're making $48 an hour for 12 hours. If somebody from the outside comes in, they're getting $26 an hour for 12 hours. So there's a substantial difference between being able to staff it with the per diem outsiders than if we do it with our own people inside.
Yeah.
Study is in order.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Bob, we have the fire department budget and the ambulance department budget, each revised on 4/21. And let's see. After our conversations today, I think you want to offer some
adjustments to their numbers.
Yeah, adjustments to the numbers.
Yeah.
Again, there's so many of these numbers that are kicking around that depend upon this or depend upon that. I think that there's still a little And the budget should have some cushion, and there's still probably a little more of a cushion in there than, it really should be, entertaining at this stage.
I think actually, even after, I, I suggest cutting it this much, I think there's still more than enough in there to cover it.
So the
Because-
savings isn't enough to put into stabilization, or?
No, not that kind of, let me go through it.
Well, let me just pause for a second here. The reason I'm not gonna do that is that, it's been recommended, to us that instead of having the possibility of going to 7 or 8 next year, that we do next year with 6 and study it and see what the effect is. And then decide, when we have sort of all angles on the issue, available to us, to have us and of course the ambulance department, and Chris look at what we think the appropriate way is to, handle the calls, given the mixture of things you want to try to accomplish versus what budget constraints, there are. So there's no need to put it in for next year, because we wouldn't do it next year. We would do it the following year after every year's study.
No,
But
what I was suggesting was, if their budget got smaller, there'd be some extra money there. And maybe put that in stabilization. If there was enough to do that.
I think what Bob's saying is that, there is a surplus in the budget, and even after we make some cuts, there should still be a surplus in their budget.
which is not what Scott is talking about.
No,
Well, I'll listen, go ahead.
But, well, what I thought was, in the pro forma stuff that was furnished to us that Micheline put together, she figured the 2 new employees, the ones who replaced the person that's already left, and and a new one that there'd be money for. She had them in there at the maximum pay for the job. They don't hire people at the maximum pay. I mean, they theoretically, I guess they could, but they end up, probably more in the neighborhood of halfway up the scale, which would be something like, $3 an hour less than what she uses to figure it. So I thought we ought to reduce the budget for full timers by 3 hours for 2 men, which would be 4,160 hours, which in round numbers is $12,000. And also on the on-call, the 2 on-call items, to reduce those by a third, which would be $16,000. And I think that they still have plenty, because I don't believe that the switch that they made and how they're hiring the per diem people, I don't think it's going to turn out to be as much as the budget allows for, which is $115,000. But I don't think anybody has a real handle on how much that's likely to be. So Chris did say that there's probably going to be a shortfall in the budget this year, or there will be, more than probably should be. That still all adds up to more money. Now, back to what you were saying, Scott. Try it again.
So I heard 16 and I heard 12
Yeah, I'm saying.
as a savings.
Well, or less of an increase.
less of a cushion. Yeah.
Okay, but if we'd already funded that 16 and 12, and now we don't have to, what are we doing with that 28,000?
it gets offset. I mean, one way or the other. It doesn't get spent anyplace, so.
Probably what has happened, for example, there are the known amounts that you can budget based on your property taxes. Because you got records from how much you collected and you can increase it by 2.5%. And that's a hard and fast figure. There are income figures from the state, and those are hard and fast figures. Other income items that are not hard and fast figures include the personal property tax or the automobile tax, meals tax, those various sources of income. And there's always a little leeway in there. You have a way to go about budgeting that based upon an average of what you've been doing. And that's generally what you do is to start from it. But then, if you've got $15,000-$20,000 that is needed someplace or isn't needed someplace, your estimates, which they are just estimates, your estimates of what these other sources of income will provide can change. They're not hard and fast. I mean, you're not going to find $1 million, and you're not going to save $1 million in budget. But $15,000, that happens all the time.
Let me explain it a little bit more.
Does it end up in free cash or?
No. Well, yes, it will, but not right away. In other words, the way the budget has been put together, there's no money that's going to be going into the stabilization fund. Right. That would have been a warrant article, so there's no way to get it there at this point in time.
Okay.
And all the free cash is being used. That's the article next to the last, or it's third from the last, whatever it is. So what will happen is the local receipts figure will be reduced by 28,000, which means we go into next year. The local receipts are going to be whatever they are. So we will be using less of them, which means there'll be money left over a year from now, which will then become free cash.
Okay.
And then we worry about it. I mean, I say a year from now, it's probably more like a year and a half from now.
Right. Okay. I understand it enough to agree with it.
or don't understand it enough to disagree.
Don't quiz me.
Yeah. Be careful. We may ask you to explain it to us. Okay, Bob. So what are the changes?
My suggestion was to reduce the full-time wage by $12,000.
In which department?
I can't tell you which department.
Oh, okay. It's just
we've got to tell it to Chris. It will be out of the wage that's for full-time ambulance personnel, but that's going to get split up so that 25% of it is actually charged to the ambulance enterprise fund, and the other 75% will get charged to the fire department because of the sharing of everything.
okay. So reduce that by how much? Is that the
12,000 out of the full-time wages.
12,000 full-time wages, and then split whatever the appropriate way to split that is. Okay, yeah. That's the first change.
And then 12,000 or 16,000 reduced out of the on-call accounts. And I don't know if that can be split evenly between the two or not. Chris said he didn't have any problem with those numbers, but I don't know the way the stipend part is paid to the. We didn't really talk about that, so it may be that it has to come out of the on-call runs rather than the stipend portion. So he'll have to work those numbers out and send us back another budget summary.
Yeah. Is that it, the 12,000 and 16,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so, we're asking that there be two changes made, a total of 28,000.
Yeah.
That it come from, two generic places, full-time ambulance personnel, 12,000, and on-call personnel, from fire or ambulance by, 16,000. And that we'll leave it to Chris to decide whether the appropriate place to take a proportion of them is in each of the two budgets or from one budget, and whether it's appropriate from one subline or different subline.
Yeah.
How it works out. Okay, so I would take a motion to, make that change to the ambulance department budget and the fire department budget. Do I have a motion?
So
Do I have a
moved.
second? And do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, any further discussions on that? If not, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then as a formal vote, I would make, motion, say that we approve the fire department budget and the ambulance budget with those adjustments made. So I would take that motion. No. That's,
I'm just thinking of how I write the minutes up.
wait till
We're
you,
approving something that somebody else has to figure out.
yeah, wait till you get the figures to figure it out. I mean, we're approving them in principle. And if those changes are made, we don't care where they come from.
Yeah.
And, they're both coming out of compensation. We're reducing for what's going to be voted on at a town meeting. It's either compensation or, expenses. It comes out of compensation. All right? Aren't they all
Yeah,
expenses?
we've already approved the ambulance article at town meeting, so that gets changed to whatever the number is that comes out of this math that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only,
We're not actually going to approve the ambulance budget at town meeting. The ambulance budget is sort of approved by voting to pay for the ambulance budget from the, ambulance revolving fund. But we don't actually vote on a line, we don't actually vote on expenses and compensation for the ambulance department.
yeah, yes, we do.
We do?
Yeah,
Where? It's
the
not
vote,
in,
the vote is still, wages and expenses and capital. And then it's funded by the various sources as a separate part of the vote. Because they, if you didn't do that, there wouldn't be any line item requirement within the budget.
So you're voting both of them, right?
So the ambulance enterprise vote would be so much for wages, so much for expenses to be funded by ambulance, receipts, and a subsidy from real estate taxes if one's necessary.
okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the minutes from last year's meeting. And we do move the town vote, raise and appropriate a certain amount of money for the ambulance parts, and it's wages and expenses and capital.
How did you get a copy of last year's vote?
On the town website. It's on the town website. You go to the town clerk's, piece of the Granby town website. And, Kathy has a few things there, one of which is the minutes from last year's town meeting.
Oh, all right.
I saw that today.
Okay. I thought maybe the town report was out. That's really what I was trying to get
Yeah,
at.
no, I looked around and did not see the town report anyplace among all the papers I've got. But it turns out it's on the website. And we do vote for the three items, and we vote for sources of funding. So I forgot about that, but I just looked that up. Okay, so it is voted on specifically for compensation and expenses.
Okay, sure. I would think that maybe the vote could be to approve a fire department budget based upon, um, yeah. No, there's no way to really word it that it comes out. If we were 100% sure that the $28,000 was all going to be split, 25-75, you could do the math. I mean, that would be simple.
Yeah,
But I'm not sure that it is, because if there's some money comes out of the stipend account, that, to my way of thinking, ought to be totally charged to the ambulance department, because those people are on call, available to be on call, and that would not seem to be a cost that a fire department should bear. But I don't know the answer to that, so.
John, I'm getting some heat on, the
Yeah.
time here.
we'll let you go and as soon as we take this vote.
Okay.
So the motion, Bob, is what? Make the motion.
Approve of, I'll make a motion, we can change it later with some real numbers. To approve a fire department budget based upon a reduction of $12,000 of full-time ambulance wages and $16,000 of EMT calls or stipends as allocated to the fire department.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Well done, Bob.
Yeah.
It's, I've got 6:58, Scott. So, take a look at the email that I sent you and.
I will.
I know you can't make Monday's meeting, just, write to me any comments that you have and I'll get a further version to everybody over the weekend.
I will.
So just try to stay in touch by email. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you. Bob, you are not at the computer to get
Wait a
your.
minute. It would be better probably. I was gonna say we should probably have a motion to recess this meeting while we had the quorum here.
I don't think you need a quorum
No?
for votes. You just need a quorum to start the meetings. And then, at least from other organizations, you need a quorum to start the meetings. And our quorum started last Wednesday.
Yeah, whenever.
Yeah, a week ago, last Thursday, I think. And these things, once you have a quorum to start the meeting, then if people have to leave, that's okay. Then you still have to have a 50% vote, but it's just a 50% vote of the people voting. It's as if they're still there but aren't voting. So
Okay.
we can vote to recess later on.
Okay. How you were saying?
Yeah, I sent you an email, sent everybody an email about the draft of our statement. And it's not the whole statement, it's just the big piece. I'm going to start off with the boilerplate that we always use, as to what the state income has been for us, and a few minor things about we spent some money on this, that, and the other thing, and that we have a balanced budget. And then the key thing is the statement that we're going to make at the end. And so uh, I took a crack at the statement, the long draft. And at this stage, I think if you just give me any idea about whether it looks fairly reasonable, um, if it looks like it's too long or stuff should be there, should not be there, that would give me a handle to getting the next draft together.
You want that now or you want it tomorrow morning or
Well,
noontime?
if you can take a quick look at it and give me any quick reactions, uh, I would appreciate that.
Can you see me at the moment?
Yes, but you're frozen. I can.
Yeah, okay, because I'm looking at the thing.
Yeah, you're frozen. I can hear you fine. Your picture's frozen.
I'm not frozen anymore. I'm not frozen anymore.
I see that now.
Um, on the school portion of it, that's the main thing. I'm not sure that I like the starting out by saying that the taxpayers won't support or we don't think they'll support a 10% increase or whatever the percent was.
Okay.
I would say that it would amount to the project would amount to a 10% increase. And knowing how much that's going to hit people in the pocketbook, we feel strongly that alternatives to our educational, not philosophy really, to getting around to regionalization, that it should be studied before any attempt is made to hit the taxpayers because of the just so much money. Um, and then I'm not sure that everything else doesn't sort of fall into place.
Okay, yeah, I can take out the statement. I'll stick in something else in there. Saying, yeah, that's fine. The I left out, what alternatives, I said we don't know because nothing else has been studied. We could, we could possibly say that, alternatives probably include regionalization, using uh, temporary class space, um, and I don't know what, partial renovation, but we don't know about any of these because nothing has been studied. But people ask about temporary classroom space, um, which is probably what is most realistic, since any renovation of that building is just going to cost a ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
Let me try a couple of sentences that might hint at what some of the alternatives might be.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong about saying regionalization because it's gotten into the town reminder that we're out there talking. And I mean, it probably got in backwards because it probably came from somebody reporting on Amherst.
Yeah.
But there's no question that the impetus, not the impetus, the starting of the regionalization prospects came from the finance committee. So no point not owning up to it.
Right. No, I wasn't concerned about that. What I was thinking is that if we mention some of these other alternatives and people begin to think about what the other alternatives, because the other alternatives include abandoning the building and setting up these temporary classrooms, hiring basically mobile trailers for classroom space, or going to school in a building that is substandard and is not going to be brought to standard, and whatever implications that is for the kind of approvals that you get to run a school. That there are other alternatives, but they just may not even be as thinkable as a regionalization. Because if we can't do regionalization, and you got to do one of these other things, then a lot of people are going to be very unhappy.
I have a hard time accepting temporary housing. Just in general, I think it would be hard to make it work. I mean, if you're running a high school, you still need a gymnasium. I mean, are you gonna cut out winter athletics, or cut out basketball? That to me is somebody's not getting the right kind of an experience for the wrong reason.
Right, but this is if what at some point, I think the citizens of town are going to have to understand that if in fact it's clear that Granby is not going to raise property taxes by 10%, that there's no way 50% of the people will vote for that, then the alternatives to regionalization can be really horrendous. And it could give some impetus to change your whole attitude towards regionalization as to what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept. We're regionalized with a larger town. It's just silly to expect that you're in charge of the process.
No, you're not.
Yeah. And somebody has got to finally say, well, look, education is more important than adults running the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I would like if that thought process could get out there sooner than later. Let me think about some other words.
Okay,
All right. Okay, well, then, I would make a motion that we recess until Monday at 6:30, and I will get some further drafts to people, over the weekend. Any responses, would lead to more drafts sooner.
7:10.
Okay, so you second the motion?
I guess so, yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks for meeting tonight.
Okay, good night.
I'll